Hello folks, and welcome to another edition of BC Renovation Magazine. In this video I'm going to show you how we are going to get rid of this old, almost 40-year-old entrance door and replace it with this brand new shiny one. If you're interested to see how I do that, stick around. Okay folks, so we've got this old door here. This is a metal door, and this is the original door to this home. We've got the sun shining brightly on us here, so I'm not sure how good the video is going to be, but we want to get rid of this old door for a few reasons. First of all, you know, it's pretty old, and you know, people have been drilling holes in it, and you know, it's just kind of had its lifespan. Outside, you know, it's got this old brick mold trim on it, and we want to put a more attractive modern trim on it, and I'm going to show you how we do that. And also, you know, this door has been this home has been broken into a few times, and you can see here where, you know, what they've done is they've kicked the door, and you know, then they broke the door here, and you know, I have fixed this up, it just temporarily, you know, to hold it together. You can also see it has an old-fashioned key and knob block set. You know, these are not very secure. You know, the only thing that's holding the door shut is just, you know, this little striker thing here, and that's not very strong. I mean, you can see there's probably a couple kicks and it broke out this way. So we want to replace that to improve the security here with a you know, more modern setup where we have a knob and a deadbolt. And you can see here with this door, you know, we have the holes are drilled for it right here. So this will be the knob, and this will be the deadbolt. You can see on the back of the door how it's reinforced with steel to prevent that, you know, kicking. We will also be using some 3-inch screws to attach the striker plate, and you know, make this a lot more secure than what it was. So this will have a 1-inch deadbolt on it now. It'll be a lot more secure than it was before. So first thing we got to do is get rid of the old door. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Okay, so I've got the old door out, and there's the old frame over there, and yeah, all I did was, you know, to get it out was, you know, just take the door off. It makes it a lot easier to work with the door off, and then, you know, pulled out that frame. You know, those frames, they may be nailed in, screwed in, glued in. Different people do things differently. You're going to see how I do mine, but this one was pretty easy to take out. There was just some screws around the brick mold there, and it came pretty much right out. So depending on how yours was installed, you might need a screw gun, you might need a really big hammer, maybe a little bit of dynamite. I don't know, whatever it takes to get it out, get it out. And you want to take it out right to the rough opening. And so this is what we call the rough opening when you get, you know, down to the studs. And so there you can see the header up there. All right, and you know, your studs. And so your rough openings are always sized a little bit bigger than the frame. And you want to clean the drywall back, you know, just trim it back so that everything is flush with your studs on the side. All right, and then clean up the floor. Anything, you don't want any old lino or whatever that might be underneath there. This is in pretty good shape. You know, we sometimes when we do this, you know, we'll see rot up the stud, and then you have to, you know, fix the stud. Sometimes the floors are rotten and you have to patch the floor. But this one's good. You know, we had a covered deck over here, so it didn't get much weather over the years, and so it's in good shape. Now, since we you know, we leveled this mobile home before we started to do this new work, this floor is pretty level. And you know, so that's just one of those things, you know, where if you do your work ahead of time, it's just everything starts to get more easy as you go along. Now, when we built the deck, we installed this flashing. sun behind me here. Great for making a video. But we install this flashing on the deck, okay? And this is a 3x3 flashing, and so it comes 3 inches up the wall and 3 inches out. And so you can see how, you know, when I installed it so that it comes, you know, up here underneath the door. What I'm going to do is put a counter flashing on that. And so this is called the flashing, and then we're going to have a counter flashing that's going to go over top of that. And I've got that pre-cut here. I'm going to show you how that's going to work. So here we have, now this is something that I like to do, folks. Usually what you do is you would just set your door, your new door, so the threshold is on the floor. And you know, the threshold on the door is about 1.5 inches thick. I like to set mine up a little bit. You can see how this is kind of rough here. It's you know, I like to smooth it out, and I do that by putting in a piece of wood like this. This is just a piece of OSB, and I've cut this at 4 1/4. My wall's 4 1/2, so it's just a little bit in, so it's not going to stick out on this side. And I line it up with the outside, and what this does, it's going to lift my door up 3/8 of an inch, and that's going to give me, it's just going to lift it up a little bit. And what that does is it gives me a bit of space so that when I put my flooring down, and we're going to be using a laminate flooring here, which is 1/2 inch thick, and it just gives you more clearance underneath your door when it swings, so that if you want to put a rug or something down here, it's not going to drag on the bottom of your door. It just lifts the door up enough to allow, you know, for the thickness of some flooring. And then that way your flooring, you know, will butt up to the threshold, and it just gives you that little bit of extra, you know, if you want to put a rug here. Easy thing to do. And it also, I mean, as you can see here, it just also makes it a nice smooth surface to work to set the door on. And I'll just be screwing that down with some drywall screws. And then once I get that in place, see, I'll change my on the other side here, maybe get the sun on my side. So this piece of flashing, now this is a 4-inch piece of flashing, so I like to get you know, some metal back underneath here, and I've cut it, so this is a 4x4, and I've cut it this to 2.5, and so now this is gonna go on here and wrap over. So once I get this attached, you know, this is gonna come over here, and then this is gonna slide over top. So that's what we call a counter. See, you can see how it's sliding over top of that other flashing. Okay, and it's gonna go down in between like this. All right, and then you can see I'll be nailing this down, and now you can see how this gives us a nice finished edge here. So this accomplishes a couple things. So number one, it gives us a nice waterproof place to set our door on, and the threshold on our new doors are all plastic, covered with aluminum, so there's no wood there to rot. So if that plastic and aluminum threshold sits on this aluminum flashing, it's not going to rot. This also finishes it. You can see that underneath the door, this is going to be finished. We won't have any wood or anything underneath there. We're going to have this this metal, which will be underneath the lip of the threshold when it comes out, and it also waterproofs this. So any water that does get underneath there is going to get directed down over this other flashing. So you can see here, you know, it's going over this other flashing that we put on when we did the deck, and then it'll get down and channeled away from the home. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get this installed, and then I'll show you where I'm at then. Okay, so I prepared my for my threshold. So now you can see how I've got this. This is all done, and I've just nailed this down with some roofing nails. And now I've got my door here. It's laying here. I'm ready to, you know, I'm gonna just lift it up into the opening like this and set it on here. Folks, you want to take some time and get this nice and right and straight, level, smooth. If you have a nice firm place for your threshold to sit, you won't have what I call a spongy threshold. If the threshold sits on a nice solid surface, when you step on the threshold, it will be nice and solid. You know, if it's got gaps and stuff underneath of it, it's gonna wave and wiggle and be spongy. Now, depending on the door that you buy, you know, they come different ways. This, you know, this is a complete unit. This has a composite threshold, so it doesn't rot, and here you can see the aluminum lip on it. Composite's just a fancy word for plastic. And this has these little shipping blocks on the bottom, so you can see one here, and they do that to protect the threshold when it's being transported. And so here you can see I've already taken this one off, and so, you know, it just pops off like that. I'll be taking this one off. You want to make sure you take those off. You know, again, you don't, you know, there's a gap there. If you try to put this in your opening, first of all, it may not fit your opening. It might make it too high. And you know, it's going to create a gap underneath here. So you want to get, you know, you want to take these off and set the threshold wants to sit right down on this now. Sometimes, you know, you'll have stuff on the sides, on the top, you know, they'll staple stuff on. You just need to clean up the whole outside of your jamb on the outside, so that when it stands up, it's going to be nothing to you know, get in the way between the jamb and this rough opening. And so I'm just about ready to stand this up now. And let me see here. So what I'm going to be doing, it's really hard to film this by myself. I need a camera person. So what I'm going to do is, just before I stand this up, next clip you're going to see the door standing in the opening. You want to make sure this is all clean. But I've just got some, you know, some mono DAP, whatever, you know, it's just some kind of a caulking. I don't use silicone for this. I like to use you know, this is just an acrylic window and door sealant. Here you can see it. This is what I like to use. It's paintable. You know, it comes in different colors. This is just clear. But what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be drawing a bead of silicone along here like this. Nice, thick, fat one. And 2 of them. And what that's going to do is seal the bottom of the threshold so there's no drafts coming out back and forth. It's also going to create a water seal, so that any water that does manage to get underneath here, you know, is going to hit the caulking and it won't go anywhere into the house. We do a double bead, just, you know, to be sure. 1 is none, 2 is 1. And then I'm also going to be, you know, caulking here, putting a nice fat bead in here to you know, to seal this as well. All right, both sides. Okay, so that's the next phase here, and I'll do that and get it standing up here, and then I'll show you how we're gonna attach it to the opening. Okay, so here I'm just going to show you the caulking before I put the door up in the opening. So I caulked a nice thick bead along the edge. Same thing over there, and my 2 beads in the center. So, you know, any water that does get in here, it's going to get directed back out. Okay, so we've got our door in the opening here, and I'll just explain to you how we go about you know, installing this and getting it, you know, to this point now from, you know, where it was just laying on the floor out there. Critical part of installing this is using these cedar shims. And so these cedar shims, this is what they look like. You know, they're just tapered pieces of cedar. You know, they're thick at one end and thinner at the other end. You can use them, you know, by just putting them in this way. You can also double them up so that you have, you know, like this. You put the 2 thin ends together. Then as you slide them together, they get thicker, and you can really fine tune your adjustments that way. And you know, I just buy these at the lumberyard in these little packs, and you know, these are called mini shims, and these are made locally here at a little town north of us. But so the way these work is what I did was, you know, as I mentioned, I put the caulk down on the threshold, and then I stood the door up in the opening. And then I started at the bottom, and the way I've attached this is I'm using the 3-inch deck screw. So there's one that's just still sticking out there. I'm still adjusting this door. I'm not finished here, but I run them through the jamb, and you can see I've done that, you know, up along the way. There's another one, and I put them underneath the weather strip so that you don't see them. Okay, so the weather strip covers them. And you know, just here's another one up here. Okay, and I've just done that, you know, all the way around. And you know, again, I started at the bottom, and then what I did was I leveled the door this way, the jamb. I start on the hinge side first. You always start at the hinge side first, and you get you attach it at the bottom, and then you level it. And once you get it level, then you put your screw in at the top. Okay, and then then you have to level it this way, and that's why, you know, your rough opening has these gaps, and that allows you to move the door back and forth. So you can see I'm quite close to the opening here. Okay, down at the bottom I've got a large gap, so you know, that's telling me that, you know, that my opening is skewed this way. Okay, out of plumb this way. So in order to make my door level, what I do is I just put my level on the side of the jamb like this, and then I just, you know, I just adjust my shim on the hinge here, you know, in and out, in order to get this, you know, to the point where the door is level on this side. Okay, and you just slide these in, you know, and so once you get the hinge side set, you know, then you just basically kind of close the door, and then you just start inserting your shims in order to get them, you know, everything correct. And by correct, I mean you look at the gaps on the door, and so from this point on, you just look at the door. So, well, okay, wait a minute, I'm getting ahead of myself. So once you get this side set, then you have to set the other side, the catch side, and then you have to move your jamb in and out this way until the door sits properly in the opening. And basically what that means is that this jamb, you level this jamb with the level, and if this one's level and this one's level, then your door should fit. Now sometimes these doors have a little bit of they're a little bit off, they're not perfectly flat, and so then you can sort of cheat a little bit by moving, you know, that top in or out, you know, to make it fit nice. So you want it to fit nice so that you have your weather strip is fitting nicely there, so that there's no gaps. You don't want to see any daylight through there. Okay, and then all you do is you insert these shims. Now I don't know if you can see how I've inserted that one there, but there I've got two, and you know, you just slide them, you know, back and forth until you get this gap correct. So by correct, I mean even. All right, so you know, if you look at the gap here, it's even, and you just move that in and out until it's even. Really, that's really all there is to it. And you know, just again using these little cedar shims, and you can just dial it right in, and you can see here, you know, I've got this pretty straight. You know, and folks, depending on the quality of your door, you know, you're not going to get this perfect, you know, but you want to make sure that you've got clearances, because especially in a mobile home, these mobile homes, they move around a little bit, you know, between seasons. And so if you have your tolerances are too tight, the door could pinch, you know, when the seasons change. So, you know, these doors have got very generous gaps on them. And so, you know, once we install these, you know, they're pretty good. And so then once you get this all dialed in, you know, then we just trim off these hinges flush back into here. You can use a utility knife for that. I'm going to use a little saw. I'll show you how I'm going to do that, but you can just use a knife. So I installed my latch set already here. I got a late start yesterday. I'm into the second day here, and I got a late start with this yesterday, and then I had several other little things that came up that I had to take care of, and so I just had to get this in so I could get it locked up last night. But you know, that's how you do it. And you just, you know, you can see my screws. There's a screw coming through, you know, and I got up on top there as well, you know, there's another one up there, and you know, just down this side. And you just, you know, just basically get these in and out so that you you know, just get it fastened in there. Now you notice that, you know, I've got these shims behind the hinges. Okay, I still have to put one in behind here, but this is pretty tight. And then on the hinge side, what I do is I install one screw into the furthest out hole, and they actually leave that hole open for you with this particular brand door. And so there's a 3-inch screw into there, same thing on each one of the 3 hinges, and that is actually for security. And so that's to help make it more secure so that it's harder to, you know, force the door off of its hinges that way. You know, by putting the shims underneath the hinge, that makes this very more stable, you know, so that it stays more stable. So between the hinge, the shim behind the hinge, and that 3-inch screw in there, that's not going anywhere in the future. Okay, so you know, we've got that all set. Now we do the same thing on the catch side. Here you can see I've got my catch plates installed, and you know, these all come pre-routed. You have to touch them up a little bit with a chisel, but you know, basically these are all set from the factory where they make these things. But you know, you want to get you know, shims behind the latch set so that the door can't be forced with a bar. You know, if they come in from the outside with a bar and pry it, if this is not solid, then they can pry this out of the way, and you know, it will make the catch on the latch kind of skip. Not so much, you know, with the deadbolt, because the deadbolt comes in pretty far. But you know, here I'm still going to be putting in. You can see the 2 screws. So here, these again are 2 3-inch screws. These inside ones here, outside ones I mean, this one and this one, are 3-inch screws, again to help make it more secure, so that if somebody tries to kick the door in, you know, they got to try and break everything, not just the jamb. You know, that old door with just the one knob on it had none of these security features on it. So, and again, you know, you can see in there we've got that metal plate that the deadbolt goes through, and so it's a lot more secure than the other door was. Now that being said, I mean, you know, we got a patio door there that's all glass. You know, we've got a big glass window here. If somebody really wanted to get in here, you know, they would just smash the door, reach in and unlock it. So, but you know, like they say, locks are for honest people. But we kind of do, you know, what we can to prevent, you know, people from getting in as much as we can. All right, so I'm just going to finish up, you know, putting my rest of my shims in here, and just, you know, finishing up the attaching it there, and then I'll be moving on to the trim. All right, I'm going to show you how I'm going to saw those shims that are sticking out on the door over there. But this is the tool I'm going to use for this. It's made by Rigid. I'm not sponsored by Rigid. I don't get anything from Rigid. Again, you know, when I come across something that works, I like to you know, I like to tell people about it. So this oscillating tool is a tool that you know, has been around for a while. This is nothing new. And you know, I kind of resisted at this. I looked at one of these and I thought, this is a gimmick thing. But I can tell you, you know, as a renovator or DIYer, this little thing is amazing. What you can do with this little thing. It cuts drywall, it'll cut metal. You can, you know, you can change your blades on it and put different blades on it to do different jobs. It's just amazing what you can do with this thing. So this particular one is a cordless model. It's got a battery in the end there. The only thing that I would do next time is I would buy the corded version of this. I'm kind of old school. I've been doing this for a long time, and you know, I still kind of like the corded tools. You know, you don't have to worry about a battery. You know, your batteries eventually will give out on you. But you know, this one was cheaper, so at the time it was cheaper than the corded one, and so I bought it. And so I'm just going to show you how well this works. So you know, here we have a shim, you know, so this thing is sticking out. Well, I'm done with this job now, you know, so I want to get rid of this this thing that's sticking out here. So you know, you just come in here like this, and you know, just like that, it's gone. You know, now we have a, you know, even place that we can, you know, when we get to putting our trim on, you know, there's nothing sticking through. So yeah, if you have a little bit of extra money and you want to buy yourself a new tool, I highly recommend you know, one of these. Not necessarily this brand. I like the Rigid brand because, you know, they're guaranteed forever if you register them. You know, if anything happens to them ever, it's a lifetime as long as you own the thing. And so are the batteries. If the batteries die on you, and eventually the batteries always do die on you, you know, you get they'll replace your batteries. So that's pretty cool. All right, folks. So now we're ready to put our outside trim on. And this particular door, now these doors come in different configurations, and so this particular door came without any trim on the outside. So sometimes you'll get doors that have you know, like the old door had, it had this brick mold on it. We call this a brick mold, but you know, it has this trim on it, and the door came with that. So you know, then that kind of takes care of that gap between the door jamb and the rough opening. But quite often nowadays you'll find doors like this where they don't have any trim. So we're going to be installing trim on here now, and I'm going to use a 6-inch 5/4 by 6 I'll show it to you, trim that I'm going to put on here. So you know, we're going to be taking all this metal siding off and eventually putting on some new siding. And so, you know, we don't want this old siding underneath our new trim, so I'm going to have to trim this metal back, you know, to get down to the bare wood, the bare framing there, all the way around, and then I'll be putting my trim on. You know, if you were putting, you know, it depends on the siding that you have. You know, we could just go over top of this now with the trim, and then you'd have a finished, you know, it'd be finished, right? But you know, I'm going to be cutting this back and then putting the trim on. And when I install the trim, you can see on here there's a line. I'm not sure if you can see this. It's kind of embossed in the wood, but it's 1/2 inch back from the edge of the jamb, and that's where I'll be lining up the trim. So there's a carpenter rule of thumb that when you're installing trim on the outside, any place where you're installing trim on the outside, you leave what's called a 1/2 inch reveal. And you'll see once I start putting the trim on how that looks. You never bring your trim up even with your jamb, because the jambs, you know, they do tend to wander a little bit, and that you know, compensates for any of those little wandering discrepancies. And it also just looks better. It gives you a place where you can caulk, you know, after this is in, we can caulk that and weatherproof it. If you bring it out flush, and I've seen a lot of DIYers, you know, amateurs do this, where they'll bring it out flush with this, it just doesn't look right, and you can't weatherproof it. It's just it's not the right way to do it. So this is the trim that I'm going to be using. I'm using a product called Smart Trim, and this is basically it's a hardy plank product. It's an engineered wood product, which in this case is a fancy word for OSB board. Okay, so now this is an exterior grade OSB board. You know, it's got the exterior glues and stuff in it, so you know, it's you know, it's engineered for outside use and for weather. And so, you know, it has an embossed wood trim on it, embossed wood grain on it, and to make it look like wood. And it's 5/4, so it's 1 inch thick, and that helps to fill out. You can get it in like 4/4, which is 3/4, but the 5/4 fills it out more, so that when you put your siding and other stuff up to it, your siding's not going to come ahead of the trim. So you know, this is what you want to do, is you want to use the 5/4. If you use the 4/4, the 3/4, then your siding is going to stick out ahead of your trim. Now again, that depends on how, you know, how you're doing it. If we were just going to put this on top of that metal siding that's out there right now, it's not an issue. But since we're going to be removing that and then putting siding up beside this, we want to have this thickness so that we've got something to put our siding up against and keep our siding from coming ahead of the trim. Okay. Okay, so my tin has been all cut back here now, so I've got room now to put some tar paper in here, and then my trim. And you can see that underneath this metal here, there's no tar paper. Usually, you know, when you build a regular home and put siding on it, you put tar paper or some kind of a house wrap or something underneath of it. You just don't put it right on the wood. Manufactured homes, you know, quite often this is how it's done, and they just do that, I guess, to save money, you know, as it's going down the factory assembly line. You know, it just it increases the efficiency in the production of the unit. And you know, this is almost 40 years old, this home, and you know, it's actually not bad. I mean, underneath, I mean, this is the original, it's still sound, it's all good. But when we do it, we're going to be putting tar paper underneath there for sure. So anytime we do, like you'll notice when we did the deck, you know, we put the tar paper on first before we put our header joist on, and then we flashed it. So you know, we're building up weather protection here, and it starts with this layer of tar paper right here, which goes behind anything. You know, we try and keep water from moving in. If water does get past any of this stuff, it gets to the tar paper, and the tar paper directs the water away from the building. It protects the building. So we're going to be doing the same thing here, and so I have this tar paper here, and this is going to get put on like this, and then we'll put our trim on top of that, and I will be overlapping now. This tar paper will overlap all of this other stuff, so it's like shingles. So the tar paper is going to come down, it's going to come down, and it's going to overlap, and you know, any water that gets underneath that trim is going to get directed away from the building. Up on top, I've trimmed this. I'll just get up on top here with my little bench. So, I mean, you can see here we have no overhang, and you know, I'm a bit away from my roof yet. We have a little channel up here that directs the water, you know, that comes off the roof. It's like a little mini eaves trough. But you know, any water that might come over the edge of that, could come over the door, you know, could leak behind the door until we get our roof on and get this all finished. So temporarily, I'm just going to leave this here, and you can see how I've cut it, and I've pushed it up, I've bent it up, and so this is going to be like a little secondary piece of flashing over top of my trim when I get my trim on here, that will keep the water from coming down over the door. Alright, so I've got the tar paper stapled on there, and folks, this is probably the most critical part of this whole thing, is getting this layer thing going on with your tar paper and your flashings. This is what's going to keep the water out of your house. You know, especially, you know, if we weren't putting a just back up here, if we weren't putting a roof on this, you can see how exposed this is to the weather. You know, we get driving rains that come in here with the wind, and you know, just drive against this wall here, and so you need to have that protection built up to shed the water. If you don't do this right, you're going to end up having water inside on your floor. And so what I've done is I've started with the two outside pieces first. Okay, I put those on, and I've run them up underneath this top piece. Okay, so once I got the two side pieces on, then I put the top piece on, so that everything is overlapping. Down here, I've left this open so that I can show you. So this, you can see this is going to come down now, and it's going to go over top of that flashing. All right, and you know, it goes over top of this paper we put on when we did the deck. Okay, and it's going to overlap onto that flashing. So you can see how this, you know, this overlaps. We've also overlapped the paper onto the jamb. You know, that's how we're going to take care of that gap there, help seal it with the air, from the air and water. You know, once the trim goes on, it's going to be sort of the real thing that protects it. But think of it as the trim protecting the tar paper. And I've kept the tar paper back from that line where we're going to put our trim, 1/8 of an inch, so we don't have the tar paper sticking out of our finished edge. All right, so this is going to get stapled down here, and so the water is going to come down like this and out like this. Okay, so I'm ready to start nailing my trim on, and I'll just explain to you how I've laid this out. So when I install this trim, because this is an engineered wood product, and I would do it regardless, I don't set this right down on the deck. What I do is I space it up. I just have a spacer here and I space it up. It's about 1/4 of an inch, and so that's going to leave 1/4 of an inch between the bottom of the trim and the deck. And the reason I do that is to allow water to get out and away from underneath the trim. You know, this being engineered wood, aka OSB, even though it is an exterior grade meant for this purpose, if it sits in water, it will expand. I had that happen where if it sits in water, it will start to blow up. And I'm sure you've all seen that, where, you know, you've seen trim, it's blowing up on the end. So in order to help prevent that, we just set it up off of the deck so that it's not going to sit in water. Any water that gets in there is going to run away. I've also pre-painted these. This has got the first coat. It will get another coat after it's all installed. But I pre-painted it, the first coat. And when I painted it the end. So that this end on the bottom is painted. And I haven't cut that end now. That's painted, and so it's sealed. The end grain, grain of this board is sealed. I'm doing all my trimming up on the top. All right, and so that when I install that top board, I'll show you how I take care of that sealing, that raw edge that's up there. All right, so this is ready to start nailing on, and I'll be using I'm going to be using an air nailer. And so this is the one that I'm using here, right here, this Porter cable. And I'm going to be nailing these on with a 2.5 inch galvanized. Okay, this is important for outside. It has to be galvanized when you're outside, otherwise they're going to rust on you. And it's just an 8D finish nail, and you know, this is what they look like. And so, you know, they just go in there, and 2.5 inches long. That's plenty long enough to hold that trim on. And so this is an air tool, and I've got in the back of my truck over there, I've got an air compressor. You can see it sitting in the back there. And so I'm plugged into that air compressor, and I'm ready to start nailing this trim on. Okay, so folks, you know, these air tools, it's not necessary to put this on. You can just use nails and a hammer. You know, there's no reason to go out and buy these air tools. I mean, I have them, so I'm using them. But you know, I can tell you, I've been doing this for over 40 years, and you know, it was many years before I bought air tools. And you know, in those early years, I just did everything by hand, and you know, I got the job done. I made a pile of money without air tools. And so, you know, a lot of times we get caught up in the hype of tools. It's not necessary. Nothing wrong with a hammer, doing it the old-fashioned way. All right, so I'm lining up this edge with that 1/2 inch reveal mark that I have on the board. Okay, now that I've got that set, I'm going to take my little shim space out that I had underneath there so it doesn't get stuck. Okay, and so now I'll just start nailing this down. And you nail it about every 16 inches, something like that. Okay, I'm just going to nail it down the inside edge more or less right now. And I'll tell you why in a bit when I do the top part. We are not right flat against the building here, and that's just because of how crooked everything is in this home, and this is common in mobile homes. So we are going to, we don't want to, if we nail this back down to the wall, it would tilt our board back. We don't want to do that. So before we nail it down this way, we want to secure it at the top, and then that's going to keep everything straight and flat. All right, so here I've got a little bit of a problem. So I've got too much reveal here. So all I'm going to do with this is I'm going to stick a piece of this wood in here. Just cut this quickly. And I'm just going to wedge the jamb over so that we're closer to where we want to be here. Right, so I'm just going to push it. Just going to push it like this. Okay, and there we go. I've just wedged that over. All right. And so again, you can, you know, what I mentioned to you before about, you know, this where we had this problem. I'm going to take a bit more off of that. This is why we don't line up on the outside edge. If we lined up on the outside edge, you would see that wiggle wobble there. When we get done, you won't see any wiggle wobble here. All right, we're ready to go here. Here I'm going to put the nails a little bit closer because I'm, you know, trying to hold this. So now I'm going to put my trim on the other board here. Place that in there. Okay, I'm lining up with that half inch mark there. So these 18 gauge nails, they go in and they just make a very little dimple. When the second coat of paint goes on, it fills any of the little recesses there from the nail. You don't have to do a lot of filling and stuff like that. It's another reason I like to use these. In. I'm going to take this out now. Oh, there it goes over the edge. All right. And this one is lining up really nicely here, so I'm going to stick one in the middle. Okay, again about 16 inches apart. Okay, so now now that I have those on, I can measure my top piece and I can cut my top piece, and I'm going to show you how I install that and make that watertight. All right, so I've cut my top piece there, and it's just sitting there. Now, what I'm going to do to weatherproof this is I'm going to put some caulking where the joints meet there. So Now this is the way I do it. There's a lot of different ways to do this, folks. You know, and there's not necessarily a right way and a wrong way. It, you know, kind of comes down to each person, how he wants to do things, how he or she wants to do things, and this is how I do it. And so, you know, I don't try and miter. I just go straight across the top, and then what I would do is you know, overlap the top over the sides, instead of trying to fit miters. Especially if you're a DIYer, you know, those miters can be pretty tricky to fit. So you know, miters, you know, when you cut it on an angle. So what I'm going to do is to waterproof this now is I'm going to be putting a slippery here. Okay, so I'm just going to put a bead of caulking on top of this. Okay, so you can see how we have this kind of raw edge here. So I'm just going to put a nice fat bead of caulking on that, and when I put the board on top of that, it's going to squish into that, and I'll just rub it out. You know, any excess that comes out of there, I'll just rub it out. Okay, all right, so now I'm ready to put my board on top of that, and you'll see it's just going to squish out of there. All right, you can see it squishing out of there. All right, so now I'll nail this on. I'm just going to wipe that, and then once the second coat of paint goes on, it will fill that. There's no water getting into that. All right, folks, so I've got this all nailed down now. This is done, except for, you know, another coat of paint. You know, I've run it along on the inside here with some caulking, and when this gets painted now, it's going to get painted, you know, again around and right back to the weather strip. So this will all be the gray color. The door, we're going to leave the color that it is. We're going to leave it white, and you can see how the trim here comes right up nicely to the threshold. All right, same thing on the other side here. You know, there's no gaps. You can see how we're off of the deck here with our board. Okay, you can see underneath how we have this nice finished edge there now. I'll try and get a little bit better angle at it, but you can see there, and that's all waterproof. Remember how we caulked underneath there, so any water that comes down and splashes is not going to you know, get in underneath the threshold there. And so we've got one little job left to do here now, and that's on the inside. So we have this gap now between the jamb and the rough opening. We have this gap all the way around, and so it's important that we put some insulation in there in order to, you know, make that so it doesn't get drafty. And a lot of people will use that spray foam. You have to be really careful when you use spray foam. A lot of window and door manufacturers now won't warranty their product if you've used that. The problem with that is it's an expanding foam, and it can actually, you know, push on everything and just push it all out of whack and it can create a lot of problems. So what I do is I just use fiberglass. And so what I've done here is I've you know, just taken some fiberglass insulation, just cut it into these strands, and you know, then I just put it in here, and I just take something and poke it in there. And so I've got this little saw here. You can use anything, and you just, you know, you just sort of poke it back into that crack there loosely. You don't want to pack it in there, just loosely. You want to have it full but loose, and, you know, make sure you get in between all your shims. And you know, once you have that done, then you're ready to put your trim on. We're a ways from trim here with this job, but you know, that's sort of the last little thing. So that's another little job done, folks. I hope that was helpful to you. And so this is ready for paint, and I'll just take you inside. So you can see now how our door, you know, just stays put wherever we want to put it there. It's because we've got everything nice and plumb. You know, now we have a door that is a lot more secure than the old one was. The old door around the lock set was all foam. I'll show it to you here. So you can see this is all foam. That's really not very strong. And it's part of the reason why this all broke out, whereas on this door there's a huge block of wood in here. This is all actually solid wood underneath the metal, so that improves the you know, the kickability of this to get it open. We've installed Wiser lock set here. Again, I'm not sponsored by any of these people, but I've been using Wiser lock sets almost exclusively you know, for my whole building career, and I really like them. They're not as good as they used to be. The quality certainly isn't there, as you know, it is with most things these days, but you know, it's a really good, solid, middle of the road product. As far as security goes, you know, this is a mid-range security. Again, you know, this isn't $1 million home, so you know, we've improved the security of this home immensely with, you know, what we've done here with this new door and all the things that I've described to you. But you know, one of the tests of job well done is when you close that door, it's just like closing the door on a Mercedes. It should just be solid, right? Nothing's binding, nothing's dragging. It's you know, just a nice solid feel. All right, so one more little thing. Oh yes, and I'll show you here. You can see how I finished the insulation there. I poked that through there. All right, gonna show you how that's ended up there. And one more thing with these is that when you get done, you want to look underneath between the bottom of the door and the threshold. Now, again, this varies from door to door, manufacturer to manufacturer, but if you see any gaps underneath there, this particular door has a way to adjust this. So there's these Phillips screws in here, and what you can do is you can turn these, and you can raise or lower this piece here to make it fit the bottom of the door. So underneath the door there's a rubber sweep, and you want that to just, you know, just be touching, so there's no gap, no light showing underneath that, and then any water that comes down then will be directed out onto the threshold. But that's the way you adjust it on this particular door, is with these you know, these Phillips screws. And you can see underneath there that little piece of OSB board that we put underneath there. That's just going to lift our door up enough to compensate for the new flooring when we get to that point, and just so that our door gives us a little bit more room over, you know, over a rug if you want to have a rug or a mat, something at the door. All right, folks, if you find these videos helpful, it's really helpful to us if you subscribe, comment, share the video with your friends, give us a thumbs up. That really helps us out. You know, that doesn't cost you anything, but you know, those little things really help us out, you know, to get us showing on YouTube and get us to get spread around, and that really helps us. So yeah, if we're helping you, if you can help us, that would be a great thing for you to do, and we'd really appreciate that. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see you on the next one. I think on the next video we're going to be building some stairs. Bye-bye.